should have made this video a long time ago. That was less graceful than I expected it to be. Today we're going to talk about beer, like good beer, in one of my favorite cities, Beijing, China. I don't know if I'm like one of the top experts, but I've done a fair share of drinking in Beijing. My husband and I seek out craft beer basically wherever we travel. So when we moved to Beijing, and actually when we were first visiting Beijing before we moved there, we realized that there's a little microcosm of craft beer places going on in Beijing. Sometimes it leaves you wandering the Beijing hutongs and you're pretty sure you're lost, and then all of a sudden you hear a bunch of like white people yelling, and then you're like, oh, we made it to the brewery, here we are. A bug crisis. Here's the basic facts. Number 1, Beijing has a lot of craft beer. Number 2, said craft beer is a little hit or miss, obviously, as it is everywhere. Fact number 3, you use me as your Beijing beer guardian angel. You will not be disappointed. So let's go backwards, starting with my 4th favorite brewery in Beijing, which is Aero Factory Brewing. So Aero Factory actually started as a place called Stuffed. It's a sausage restaurant. It's based out of a small place that used to be a vegetable vendor in the hutongs. That's their original location, is like tucked away in this scrappy little hutong. Aero Factory was founded by 2 guys from Europe. One is from Sweden and one is from England. I actually did meet the guy from England. His name is Will York, and he found out I made videos, and he like got all like philosophical on me, and we started talking about like artistic projects and how we were gonna go in the Chinese countryside and I was gonna make films for him or whatever. I don't know. I just smiled and nodded. So anyways, they have a location in the hutongs. Their second location is on Liangmahe. That location is quite a bit larger and more modern. It's so weird because the small location in the hutongs feels like artsy and like really hip to the point of being like pretentious. I like the hutongs, don't get me wrong, but that place makes me feel like I'm not good enough to be there. However, the other location, which was actually much closer to where we lived in Beijing, that one is so drastically different. It almost feels like a sports bar. And it has a rooftop seating area, so when the weather was nice, it was super awesome to go sit on the roof and have like freshly poured craft beer. It was great. I really liked the atmosphere. They had a lot of food options. Their foods are like super experimental. So you would order like a turkey burger and it would have like garlic sriracha aioli with some wild arugula, and they bring you out like 12 different sauces. The beers themselves can be a little hit or miss, to be honest. I have actually been to Aero Factory Brewing and gotten a flight of beers and tasted a bunch of them, and I found a couple that I really liked. There's been times I was at Aero Factory where I tasted the ones that I hadn't and I didn't like them, so there was like nothing on the menu that I really liked. I just realized I'm still wearing my junior sheriff badge. Just to give you guys some context, I'm not really into hoppy beers. I don't like that hop bitterness. I like a coffee bitterness. Not a huge fan of like a heavy malt or a heavy sweet beer. I like sours and I like bitter stouts. My husband likes IPAs, so he was always happy at Aero Factory, but like both of us agreed that their beers weren't, you know, number 1 in the city. But we did go there a lot. We went to all these places a little too much, probably. Oh, and this is super random, but they actually have a really good whiskey sour, and it actually does have beer in it. You'll have to try it and let me know what you think. They don't use egg white, they use like a frothed up wheat beer or something like that. It's very interesting. I've ordered that whiskey sour many times. Moving up the list to number 3, we've got Great Leap Brewing. Gonna guess if you knew anything about craft beer in Beijing before you clicked on this, you expected Great Leap to be number 1, but no, it's not. I don't really like love Great Leap. I've been there many times. They have some great beers, really solid, good, consistent beers. They're very successful in Beijing. I own a t-shirt from them. We've gotten growlers from them. But when it really comes down to it, they didn't have a ton of beers for me. They had a beer that was brewed with tea instead of hops that I really liked. There were a couple different things, but for the most part, it was pretty like pale ale and IPA and like hop bitterness heavy on their beer selection. So Eric was always a little happier there than I was. Great Leap Brewing has 3 different locations. It's kind of confusing. Instead of calling them 1, 2, and 3, they are locations 6, 12, 45. Great Leap Brewing number 45 was like super close to where we lived, so we used to bike there like once a week minimum, and that one has really good New York style pizzas. And the other larger location specializes in burgers, but the original one is really where it's at. If you're going to Beijing short-term travel, you love craft beer, you gotta go to the original Great Leap. And the reason is just because of the atmosphere of it. It's actually tucked away in the hutongs. It's not very far off one of the biggest tourist attractions in Beijing. When you take a turn off the main path and you're on these like back alleyways, and then all of a sudden you come across Great Leap, and it's like this quiet little sanctuary under these like trees, and you get to sit outside and have fresh beer. It's just really fun. I really enjoyed it. So Great Leap Brewing was actually founded by a husband and wife team. The wife is from Shandong province in China, and the husband is from Cleveland, Ohio in the US. One thing I haven't mentioned to you guys is that all these places that I'm listing are very expat heavy. Craft beer is not like a super Chinese thing yet. Obviously, there are many Chinese people at these places. I'd say it's maybe like 50-50. All I'm saying is it's not representative of the actual population of Beijing, but I do think the craft beer scene is taking off in Beijing. Moving up to number 2 is Slow Boat Brewery. I fell in love with Slow Boat pretty much immediately, and it's because of the same reason I fell in love with Great Leap when we first got to Beijing. I ended up wandering around the hutongs, thought I was lost. I was like, there's no way we're gonna find this place. I don't understand, nothing is marked. It's just a bunch of like stinky bathrooms and men without shirts on, and it's super hot. And then all of a sudden you hear kind of like this faint bar noise, and you see a little tiny metal sign that says Slow Boat Brewing, and you open up this door and it's like the lights of heaven have shined onto you, and you're like, oh, I'm home. Because Eric was convinced that we were completely lost. He's like, honey, maybe we should stop looking, like this doesn't feel right. And then I'm like, nope, this is it. And he's like, no, it's not. And I'm like, oh yes it is. Open the door. Ta-da! And he was like in awe. He thought it was the coolest thing ever. So it's nice when you win with your husband. So that Slow Boat Brewery location was actually the only one until like, I want to say like 8 months ago. And that second location is the polar opposite. So the first location, super small, always jam-packed, like insanely busy. They sometimes have to make announcements to the whole bar for everyone to be quiet because it's in a neighborhood. Bartenders are super fun there. The kitchen is like crazy busy. It's so small. It's amazing what they can do with such a small space. And it's kind of funny because they have like the old-fashioned like hutong plumbing. So there's a sign in the bathroom that basically says, if you need to poop, go to the hutong public bathroom. Don't poop in our toilet because it's gonna back everything up. So I just think it's kind of endearing because it really is a small location. The new one though is like 3 stories tall. It's freaking huge. They brew there. They have like, I think they're starting to like can. Slow Boat is blowing up right now. And like I said, that new one is in San Tuan. Slow Boat was founded by 2 Americans who were like longtime Beijing expats. So as far as beer goes at Slow Boat, I found a bunch of beers there that I really, really liked, but it is also a pale ale and IPA heavy place. So if you like pale ales, you like IPAs, I would recommend that Slow Boat be your first stop, maybe Great Leap be your second stop. That's my recommendation for you. My husband loved Slow Boat and he loves IPAs. But Slow Boat is also getting bigger, so they're producing more beers, and they've got all these cool seasonal options popping up all over the place. So I tried some kind of like peach saison thing, and I had like this really heavy like chocolate or coffee stout or something. I've had beers at Slow Boat that like I really, really liked. Also, their fries are super good. So that brings us to the number 1 favorite brewery, which is... Can you guess it? Which brewery did I buy a hoodie at? Jinga! I freaking love Jinga Brewing. I probably would be pretty satisfied actually with Beijing Craft Beer scene if Jinga was the only one I ever tasted. I have had so many freaking Jinga beers that I absolutely love. And I think it's because they are constantly experimenting and making really crazy beers. So they've got ones with like Sichuan peppercorns, and their flavor infusions are done so well. Like I feel like when I drink a Great Leap beer that says it has Sichuan peppercorns in it, I can like, oh, I faintly taste it. And if you have a Jinga beer that has Sichuan peppercorns, you're like, whoa, those are Sichuan peppercorns. They really highlight local, unique ingredients. There's some kind of weird construction going on right now. So Jinga became my personal favorite immediately. They even had a ghost beer there one time. It's a type of bacteria that flavors the beer to be like really sour, and if something is brewed with like a Brett or a ghost, and I think those are both shortened words, that means it's like actually legit sour. Like right now I'm drinking a sour, but it's like a sour, if you know what I mean. This is like a budget sour. Don't buy this, I don't like it. It's not very good. Oh my god, my standby at Jinga is their, I think it's called like their farmhouse saison. I can always go back to that beer. And I feel like when I'm at Great Leap and Slow Boat, I don't have those beers where I'm like, this is my old standby, this is the beer I always get here. I have that at Jinga, but I don't have that at Great Leap and Slow Boat. And at Jinga, it's the saison. Their stout is really good, but I'm kind of getting a little like bored of the stouts, and I'm going more into like saisons and sours. So right when I left Beijing, they were just starting to get into sours, and I'm so bummed that I don't live in Beijing anymore and can't taste the sours. Although I'm in the Bay Area in California, we've got quite a lot of breweries out here. So Jinga has a tap room in Sanlitun. It's like one of the last places I went in Beijing. It was like a big like, bye, I'm leaving in like 3 days. Also, their food is super unique. I didn't mention that. They've got like some crazy stuff like Yunnan cheese and pork sliders and all kinds of stuff. And Jinga was founded by 2 guys from North America. One is Canadian and one is American. And if you're curious about price, beers at these places can run anywhere from like if a beer is on special, I've seen them for like 25 or 30 kwai. And if a beer is a really unique, like seasonal run made with expensive ingredients, I've seen beers as expensive as like, I want to say like 80 kwai. But average at these places is probably around 45 kwai per pint, which in China, that is not cheap for beer, but it's craft beer. So, you know, it's kind of a more expensive process. So those are my top 4 favorites and standbys. But now I want to get into the hidden gems, the things I know a little bit less about, but the things I'm covering will help you to discover microbreweries and rarer beers than what I've described to you so far. So first things first, the festivals in Beijing, especially anything by the Beijinger, Time Out Beijing, or any event hosted by Great Leap Brewing, you're definitely going to be able to find unique beers and unique craft brewers that you haven't heard of before. So Beijing actually does have a craft beer festival, and it happens every year except in 2016 when I was there, because apparently they didn't get the right permits. It was so sad. But 2017 is supposed to be like the best international craft beer festival ever in Beijing. And I think it's usually hosted by Great Leap Brewing. They're really like the top dogs in the craft beer game in Beijing, I'd say. And then coming up close is Slow Boat. I'd say Jinga is more on the like experimental foodie kind of side of things, whereas Great Leap and Slow Boat are really trying to get into the business of like massive craft beer production in Beijing. I don't know what Aero Factory's doing. I'm not saying they're not doing well. They're clearly doing well, but I don't know what their plan is for the future or how to categorize them. They're a little bit unique. So we did not get a chance to go to the Craft Beer Fest, but we did get a chance to go to the Beijing Pizza Festival. So pizza and beer taste really good together. So of course, at the Pizza Festival, while there were a lot of pizza vendors, there were also a lot of beer vendors. So through that event, we actually did discover a couple other craft beer places. I don't really remember them off the top of my head, but what I'm saying is that if you go to Beijing and one of these festivals pop up and it's like an expat type festival, if it's food or beverage related in pretty much any way, you should go if you're a craft beer lover, because you'll probably discover craft beers that you wouldn't otherwise. There's also a place called Panda Brew Pub, which I have no experience with. I don't think I've ever tasted a beer from them before, but sometimes it's hard to remember because sometimes I would end up at these tap rooms in China, like Tap Planet in Nanjing, or that place next to Boxing Cat in Shanghai. I can't remember the name of the tap room, but Panda Brew Pub, that's another one that exists in Beijing, so look into it. I'll drop a map pin exactly where I am 99% sure that this particular microbrewery was near Great Leap number 45. It was super good. I don't remember the name of it. Something Bubbles. It's very small, very, very small, very new, really high quality, really tasty beers. And it's actually really affordable and they're very high ABV. So it's a lot of bang for your buck. The last thing I want to tell you about is this really unique beer club that I heard about. It's called Drinking Buddies. I have them linked in the blog post that I've referenced throughout this video that I have linked down below. But basically it's like a monthly subscription box of really hard to find beers. If we had stayed in Beijing for a while, I almost definitely would have signed up for this, because I went to their booth at the Beijing Pizza Festival and every single beer that they had on site was a beer I had never seen before, which is actually kind of rare for me because, like I said, my husband and I love trying new craft beers when we travel. So we've tried all different kinds of beers from all around the world, and so if I see a label that's brand new to me and I don't even like visually recognize it, my eyes are like, what is that? I think it's a father-daughter team out of London. I think that they live in Beijing now and they started this company there. They do some distribution and they're really trying to pump up their beer club with these monthly subscription boxes. I know they also have a social aspect to it where people can come together and do tastings together, which I thought is really cool. So that and every single thing I listed today is all listed down below at that link to my blog post about this exact topic. I hope this is a clear explanation of where you find these links. If you're confused, you can always comment. But anyways, I've had fun talking about beer with you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have some amazing craft beer in Beijing. If there is a place that I did not discuss, please leave it down below so I can add it to my Beijing bucket list for beer when I go back. And the last thing I would like to say to y'all is Cheers.